peripherals. A chipset has two parts, the North Bridge and the South Bridge, which manage communications among the CPU and other parts of the motherboard. A North Bridge chip, or host bridge, is one of the two chips in the core logic chipset on the motherboard. Unlike the South Bridge chip, the North Bridge chip connects directly to the CPU via the front side bus and performs high-performance tasks. The South Bridge chip, the second chip of the chipset, generally implements slower performance tasks, and a South Bridge chip is usually not directly connected to the CPU. A bus is a high-speed internet connection embedded as printed circuits on the motherboard. A bus sends control signals and data among the CPU and other internal components. It's like the information superhighway of the computer. A front-side bus is a computer communication interface that carries data between the CPU and the memory controller hub, or the North Bridge. Now, a socket is the array of pins and the securing mechanism that hold a processor in place and connect the processor to the motherboard. Socket pin connections differ depending on which generation of CPU your motherboard supports. Older sockets use a pin grid array, or PGA, that uses short, stiff pins on the CPU that align with the holes on the socket. When installing a CPU, do not force the CPU into the socket. If the CPU and socket are correctly matched, the CPU should fit. Newer motherboard sockets, called land grid arrays, or LGAs, have built-in pins and the CPUs have contact points on them. A power connector is a device found on a motherboard that allows an electronic current to pass through it to provide power to a device. Not all power connectors look alike. An ATX-style connector is one of the larger power connectors inside a computer. These connectors join the power supply to the motherboard. In this video, you learned that internal computer components include everything connected to the motherboard. A motherboard provides a communication pathway for peripherals. Buses send control signals and data between the CPU and other components. Components not directly attached to a motherboard connect via sockets. And sockets are the architecture of pins that allow this video you will be able to define a network interface card, or NIC, explore the types of NIC, and apply your understanding of how a modem functions. A network interface card, or NIC, is a hardware component without which a computer cannot connect to a network. It is a circuit board installed in a computer that provides a dedicated network connection to the computer. The card receives network signals and translates them into data that the computer displays. Originally, network controllers were available only as expansion cards that could be plugged into a computer port, router, or USB device. A NIC, or Network Interface Card, provides a connection to a network, usually the Internet. On-board NICs are built into the motherboard, and add-on NICs fit into an open expansion slot on the motherboard. In terms of function, speed, and quality, there's no significant difference between the types of NICs. Wireless NICs rely on an antenna to communicate through radio frequency waves on a Wi-Fi connection. Wired NICs rely on an input jack and a wired LAN technology such as fast Ethernet. On a basic level, your modem gives you access to the Internet. From Wi-Fi routers to mobile devices, the components that make up your home network all speak different digital languages, but your modem is the translator. It translates the signals coming from your Internet Service Provider, or ISP, into an Internet connection for your Wi-Fi router to broadcast. The modem receives information from your ISP through the phone lines, optical fiber, or coaxial cable in your home, depending on your service provider, and converts it into a digital signal. Your router and ISP can't communicate directly because they speak different languages, or rather, they transmit different signal types. So the modem digitizes those signals and sends the now usable signals to the router. Before you know it, you're online. In this video, you learned that a network interface card, or NIC, is a hardware component that can be built in or added to a motherboard. A NIC connects a system to a network, often the Internet. NICs can be wired or wireless. Onboard network cards are built into the motherboard, whereas add-on cards are placed into an expansion slot on the motherboard. And a modem transforms digital information from your computer into analog signals that can. A video card is either an expansion card in an empty slot on the motherboard or a chip built into a system's motherboard. It allows the computer to send graphical information to a video display device, such as a monitor, TV, or projector. A video card is alternatively known as a display adapter, graphics card, video adapter, video board, or video controller. A graphics processing unit, or GPU, is a specialized processor originally designed to accelerate graphics rendering. GPUs can process many pieces of data simultaneously, making them useful for machine learning, video editing, and gaming applications. Although GPUs are normally associated with the realistic graphics found in top-quality video games, several industries rely on their powerful processing capabilities. An audio card is also known as a sound card. It's an integrated circuit that generates an audio signal and sends it to a computer's speakers. The sound card can accept an analog sound, as from a microphone or audio tape, and convert it to digital data that can be stored in an audio file. Conversely, it can accept digitized audio signals, as from an audio file, and convert them to analog signals that can be played on the computer's speakers. On personal computers, the functions of a sound card are usually directly integrated into the motherboard. But for users who desire higher quality audio, a sound card is a separate circuit board that is plugged into the motherboard. A MIDI controller is a simple way to sequence music and play virtual instruments on your PC. It works by sending MIDI, musical instrument digital interface data, to a computer or synthesizer, which then interprets the signal and produces a sound. MIDI controllers are frequently used by musicians. In this video, you learned that video cards, also known as graphics processing units or GPUs, display data. Audio cards process sounds input into the computer and send signals to internal and external speakers. For most users, integrated audio is all that's needed for meetings and listening to podcasts, videos, and music. Dedicated sound cards allow for more than one input, enabling the computer to process musical. After watching this video, you will be able to recognize the role of memory in a system, differentiate between memory slots and expansion slots, and evaluate the importance of the BIOS and CMOS. The CPU is a silicon chip in a special socket on the motherboard. CPUs contain billions of microscopic transistors on a single computer chip. These billions of transistors enable the computer calculations needed to run programs available in your system's memory. A 32-bit CPU is a processor architecture that can transfer 32 bits of data per clock cycle. Think of a 32-bit CPU as a two-lane information highway. 32-bit processors are found in laptops, workstations, and servers. A 64-bit CPU is comparable to a four-lane information highway, enabling twice the amount of data to move compared to a 32-bit CPU. 64-bit processors are also found in laptops, workstations, and servers. Random access memory, or RAM, temporarily stores working data and machine code. Because RAM is volatile, any data existing in RAM is lost when power is terminated. RAM is cold pluggable or cold swappable. Cold pluggable or cold swappable means that the hardware is off or that the hardware is in a state of being without power. RAM speeds are measured in megahertz or millions of cycles per second. Currently, RAM speeds can range from 1333 MHz to speeds of 2133 MHz. RAM is available in several forms of varying speeds and storage capacities, depending on your type of motherboard and needs. The memory you use depends on your motherboard type. Common forms of memory include the following: Dynamic Random Access Memory, or DRAM, stores each bit of data in a memory cell, usually consisting of a tiny capacitor and a transistor. SDRAM, or Synchronous Dynamic Random Access Memory, is a form of DRAM semiconductor memory that can run faster than DRAM. Double Data Rate Synchronous Dynamic Random Access Memory, or DDR SDRAM, is faster than SDRAM because it fetches data twice per clock cycle. Double Data Rate 3 Synchronous Dynamic Random Access Memory, known as DDR3 SDRAM, is faster than DDR SDRAM. And Double Data Rate 4th Generation, or DDR4, is a faster, more reliable replacement for DDR3 SDRAM that uses less power. And Small Outline Dual Input Memory Module, or SODIMM, chips are commonly used in notebooks since there is a lack of space. SODIMM slots take half the space of desktop slots, but they draw more power. A memory slot holds a RAM, random access memory stick in place on a computer's motherboard. Only memory chips can fit into these dedicated slots. Memory slots allow the system to use RAM by enabling the motherboard to communicate with memory. And depending on the motherboard, there will be 2 to 4 memory slots, sometimes more on high-end motherboards. The memory slots on the motherboard determine the type of RAM that's compatible with a computer. Older machines used the original Peripheral Component Interconnect, or PCI, expansion slots. Newer motherboards use the PCI Express, known as PCIe. These slots hold expansion cards designed to provide additional features to a computer, such as enhanced sound, memory, high-end graphics, and network interfaces which can be wired or wireless. The computer's motherboard determines which additional capabilities are available based on the additional slots. The disk controller is a circuit that enables the Central Processing Unit, or CPU, to communicate with a hard disk, floppy disk, or other kinds of disk drives. The Integrated Drive Electronics, or IDE, disk controller was a standard created for communications between the CPU and hard drives in computers. An IDE controller exists as a small circuit board on the motherboard, with chips that guide how the hard disk drive stores and accesses data. Most controllers include some memory that boosts hard drive performance. The BIOS, Basic Input-Output System, manages your computer's exchange of inputs and outputs, mostly when you're booting up your computer. Every computer has a BIOS pre-programmed into its motherboard. It's different than an operating system that can be installed, uninstalled, and updated long after you've bought the computer. When your computer is unplugged, the BIOS remains operational and relies on a battery for power. Such batteries exist in laptops and desktop PCs, but it's used more frequently in a laptop because laptops are usually unplugged longer than desktop PCs. You can update a BIOS through a process called flashing. To do this, you need the BIOS version number. You can find the BIOS version number in the System Information window. In Windows 10, press the Windows key plus R, type MS-Info32 into the run box, and press Enter. The BIOS version number is displayed in the BIOS version date field. The directions on how to flash the BIOS differ among motherboard manufacturers. So check the manufacturer's website for their procedure and proceed with caution. CMOS is short for Complementary Metal Oxide Semiconductor. A CMOS battery is a coin-sized battery similar to a watch battery that is installed on the motherboard to power the CMOS memory chip. The CMOS memory chip stores a computer's hardware settings. Like all batteries, CMOS batteries expire, and when the battery expires, the system clock resets, and you'll need to replace the battery to restore the computer system time, date, and hardware settings. In this video, you learned that internal computer components include everything connected to the motherboard. A motherboard provides a communication pathway for peripherals. A memory slot holds RAM in place on a computer's motherboard. The computer's BIOS is pre-programmed into the motherboard and uses CMOS to store configuration settings. And you can replace the CMOS battery to